Hello guys, my name is SVB and I'm back with another video, and today we're going to continue the thought process series with part 2 of which DPS to pick and why. In this part, I'm going to cover the flanking heroes, this being Doomfist, Genji, Pharah, Tracer and Sombra. So let's get to it guys. So the reason these 5 heroes are considered flankers is fairly straightforward. They all have very high mobility, and in some cases unique methods of mobility that allow them to cover distances better than most other characters in the game, and get behind enemy lines to create alternate angles of threat, or contest faraway sources of DPS, like a sniper. Because of this high mobility, these heroes normally pair very well with dive comps, particularly because on their own, they can be quite squishy, but when there's a coordinated dive on the same target, the high mobility and burst damage can be a fearsome combo. So let's break down each of them, and start with the most popular flanker, and the DPS main's favorite, Genji. So why do so many people pick Genji? Well, ignoring the appeal of playing as a cyborg ninja, Genji is a hero with one of the strongest carry potentials in the game. Though I strongly advise against picking any hero with the intent to just solo carry, and I'll get into why in a minute. He's also one of the best duelists in the game, which is probably another reason why people like him so much. So let's talk through that. The key to this is that Genji is good against most other DPS, and it all comes down to the deflectability. Most DPS heroes in the game, in fact all of them, except for Doomfist, Mei and Symmetra, have a primary source of damage which Genji can deflect, be these bullets or grenades or rockets. This means that in a one-on-one, Genji can control the tempo of a fight. Firstly, a well-timed deflect can just end a fight on its own, but even if the enemy player reacts in time and doesn't hit your deflect, you can still essentially use it to stop them from doing anything to hurt you for a couple seconds. So this, combined with the strength and mobility of the dash, and Genji's double jump and wall climb, mean he's excellent at finding isolated targets, preferably DPS or healers, and then taking a favorable duel with them. However, this is also where some people who pick Genji end up failing, because they obsess over only this part of Genji's play, and forget the other areas where he's strong. Unlike say a Tracer or a Sombra, Genji is quite reliant on healing. Everyone knows the meme about Genji mains spamming the I need healing button, but this isn't born out of nothing. Genji with even 50 HP gone from his health pool is far less effective, because it severely reduces the kind of encounters he can get himself into. Sure, he can duel most DPSs in a fair one-on-one fight, but that 50 HP less means he might just lose. So Genji actually does need a fair amount of support, and that means you can't be on the other side of the map to your teammates all the time. On top of this, when Genji is paired with other dive heroes, like Winston or Tracer, he's twice as strong. Genji's right-click dash melee combo is good, but it won't insta-kill anybody, after which there's potential for Genji to lose the fight. However, comboed with a Winston and or a Tracer, you suddenly got an insta-kill. And, with the fact that Genji's dash resets after every confirmed kill, you can end up just running through the enemy team in no time if you're receiving some help in focusing down targets. The final reason that Genji needs support is his ult, because again, being 50 HP down can drastically reduce the effectiveness of his Dragon Blade. And Dragon Blade is one of the strongest ults in the game. It's actually a very good reason to pick Genji, because it's an ultimate that can open up fights and entire points, doubly so when comboed with a nano boost. There will often be times when your team is trying to attack a stubborn defense, and they just fail over and over again. That's where the proper use of ultimates can win you games. Here's an example from a scrim I played recently with the mods on my Discord server. Notice the time bank. Even though we held the enemy team to just 1 point, on Anubis, we're at the risk of losing the game because we've been unable to break down their fortified bunker. But a well-timed dive, a Dragon Blade and a nano boost on top makes it all look relatively easy. Jump on 3, 3, 2, 1, go, go, go.
I got pulled. Almost there.
Lamp down.
Nice.
Nice.
Of course, I'm helped drastically by my teammates, who really are doing all the enabling. But we needed this against an enemy team who were coordinated well too. Your ladder games probably won't be like this. Most opponents will likely crumble the minute they see a blue glowing Genji come flying at them with a katana radiating dragon energy. But if you can even get a little bit of coordination, you can see just how devastating Genji can be. Now, a similarly powerful, if not even more powerful ult, is Sombra's EMP. Being able to shut down the abilities and ultimates of every other hero is incredibly potent, and if used properly, it's an ult that can give your team amazing ult economy and allow them to create a cycle of inevitable fight wins. However, Sombra is very team dependent, a lot more so than Genji. It's great shutting down abilities for the enemy team, But if you have no follow-up, there's no point. And if you don't give your team warning that you're going to EMP, it's going to be very hard for them to react and do anything about it. On top of all this, one of Sombra's great strengths is that while invisible, she can give her team all the scouting information they could ever need, where the enemy is set up, which way they're going, who's isolated, and that gives you a huge tactical advantage in fights. So Sombra definitely requires good communication and game sense. But if you have those things, she can be a very unique tool in the game. She's an amazing counter to the two comps that people have most difficulty facing, Bunker and Goats. Again, in both cases, it's all about the EMP. If you're up against one of these comps, your job is to just farm EMP as quickly as possible, because using it against the heroes in those setups is absolutely devastating. A Bastion with no shield, no immortality, and out of turret mode is going to die fast. Similarly, a Goats comp without bubbles, active healing, shielding, or defense matrix is no longer a scary prospect, but just a juicy pool of ult charge. And that's essentially where Sombra is best, farming ult off fat characters. She's not as good as Genji at dueling, because her actual gun doesn't do as much DPS as other heroes on the list, so you don't pick her for raw damage. That being said, she is awesome at shutting down backline harassers like Doomfist or Hammond, and her passive does allow her to hunt down low HP targets, but Sombra thrives a lot more from being able to spray into fat HP targets, drop an EMP to shut them down, or get a well-timed hack onto a character in a way that can swing fights. Here's some examples from the New York Excel v Seoul Dynasty game during the Stage 1 playoffs, where Seoul's Sombra pick was able to completely dismantle New York. Particularly on this attack run on Hollywood, you can see Michelle's imprint on every good fight Seoul have. In this first fight on point A, Michelle gets a crucial hack off onto Libero, which means no shield bash for New York, and more importantly, no burst heal for their tank, Mano, who gets focused down as a consequence. And as we know, losing your main tank in the Goats v Goats comp is never good news. In the next fight, a minute later, Michelle lands a huge EMP, which Jonak does well to counter with his trance. However, that means there's no transcendence for the grab which Flutter drops, meaning New York easily get wiped again. A minute or so later, Michelle again is able to isolate Libero, take him out to fight, and deny New York that burst healing and the utility that Brigitte brings. Then, there's the crowning moment in the final fight of the round. New York are reliant totally on Jonak to build his transcendence as an answer to the grab that Flood is about to drop, that they know is coming. But watch what Michelle does.
Coming through, and they are just denying Libero from getting bashes. EMP comes out. They use the barrier at the wrong timing. I mean, this could be it right here.
Love to see the
Back
ground.
on the trap.
Knocks him out. That's going to be a hack on Jonik, as you say, in the back. He can't use a transcendence. He doesn't realize him. It comes in late. Becko's trying to stay in the suit. Will be able to do so, but for a little bit longer. Now they pop him out. They take him down. The card advances. Soul dies.
So there you can see how powerful it is to have a Sombra who's playing the game smartly. Hacking the right character at the right time is on its own enough to win fights. Now, another person who's a good tank buster and effective against Goats and Bunker type comps is Pharah. The reason for this is simple. Pharah can very easily outrange both those comps. Against Goats, there's nobody except a D.Va to contest her, and below the highest levels of Overwatch, D.Vas just aren't good enough to take out a Pharah Mercy on their own. This means you can pretty much do whatever you want. Farm ult, and then barrage them from behind, killing at least one or two members to win your team the fight. Against Bunker, Pharah can help spam the shield, and then land massive AoE damage against the exposed members of the bunker. She can even dislodge members with her concussive blast. And again, once she builds barrage, if she drops it on the bunker, she should easily kill multiple enemies since they'll all be grouped up. Now of course, these are not the only good uses of Pharah, because an uncontested Pharah will win games single-handedly, especially when pocketed by a Mercy. But in the current climate, this is just where she's the most viable. In most other scenarios, just a switch to one or sometimes two hit scan on the side of the enemy team will be enough to see you get hard countered. But then again, that in itself can be a win, particularly against a Bunker or Goats. If you get the enemy to switch comp, you've already succeeded in what you were picked to do, and that's break the comp. So overall, more so than most DPS characters, Pharah's effectiveness can drastically vary based on what you're running and what they're running, and how good a job they do of shutting you down. That's why Pharah can be such an oppressive force in the lower elos, because unchallenged, she will just destroy you. But higher up, when people can adequately counter you, she can get really reduced value, and sometimes none at all. Now there is another hero who could be a little bit like that, particularly since Brigitte was introduced into the game, and that's Tracer. It feels like when you describe Tracer, you have to describe her BB and AB, before Brig and after Brig. Before Brig existed, Tracer was an almost must pick at the highest levels, just because of how much value she could get all on her own. Need proof?
For the London Spitfire, is this the answer to their problem? Neptuno's down again. That heralds disaster generally for the Fusion, and Carpe wasn't far behind. Prophet with 3. He's killed 4 players now on his own. And the Spitfire are coming through with this one. Prophet finds...
She's capable of getting into backlines and getting picks and harassing without ever dying if played right. And a pulse bomb stick could start or end fights. However, when Brigitte was added as a hero, Tracer's place in the game took a massive hit because Brig had the potential to insta-kill Tracer with her combo. And with the GOAT's meta being so strong, and Brig being a key part of that, there was just no way you were going to get away with picking Tracer. However, since then, Brig's shield bash has received a damage nerf, meaning that she can no longer insta-kill Tracer without help. On top of that, since when do people play meta in your solo queue games anyways? Tracer can still carry games in the hands of a skilled player, and all the things that made her strong still exist. Her ability to one-clip squishies, her high mobility, how difficult it is to kill her. She can still be very strong. But the problem is that you're only ever one switch away from being countered. A highly skilled Tracer could avoid the Brig as much as possible, but you're still going to be denied access to the backline. Because even if a bash doesn't kill you anymore, it will still force you to recall, and once you recall, you just can't go back in. So ultimately, this is one of those situational decisions that depends on the context of the game, and is what is so core to Overwatch. Tracer is still as powerful as ever in certain scenarios, and against bunker comps, which are all the rage these days, a quick pulse bomb build and a stick onto the Bastion is a fight win right there. But you have to be aware now that there is someone who can be considered a hard counter to Tracer. Now that brings us to our final flanker, Doomfist. Now, Doomfist hasn't really gotten the time to shine at the highest levels of Overwatch, so it's tough to categorically say which positions he's most optimal in. However, we've all been in ladder games where a good Doomfist has taken over, and there's plenty of things we can learn from that. Firstly, we know Doomfist works best when there's no one paying attention to him. Doomfists rely on destroying backline, but they can't do that if everyone is protecting them. So Doomfist usually works best in a wait and pounce style, where you let the enemy team come forwards and leave their supports behind. Then, you dive in and punch them into the next map. That's also why Doomfist is great against uncoordinated teams, because he needs to be specifically addressed with stuns and crowd control, and if a team doesn't commit resources to stopping him, he will get tremendous value. However, because of this wait and pounce style of Doomfist, he needs his team to adapt around him. Either you all have to play aggressive dive heroes, go in together, and try to get as many kills as quickly as you can, or you have to set up a stable comp and pair Doomfist with a DPS who will output the reliable damage a team needs. Doomfist will only come in sporadically with kills, so if you're relying on him to poke and pressure the enemy team, or break barriers, you're not going to have a good time. But if you can take the pressure and attention off him, he can do a lot of work, particularly when he has Meteor Strike up, because he can play hyper aggressive looking for a kill, and just press Q to get out if he's in trouble. But there is one thing people often underestimate when talking about Doom, and that's how helpful he can be in setting up big plays. His punch and uppercut abilities can set up some really nice combos. For example, if you can get your Doomfist to uppercut the enemy Rhine, your Reinhardt can shatter while he's in the air, and get a big slam for free. Alternatively, Doomfist can just punch people around, and that's great when comboed with a Diva Bomb, for example, to force people out in the open, or move a shield out of the way. On the other hand, it's not that hard to counter Doomfist, provided you pay him some attention. Any sort of crowd control can really screw him up. A flashbang, bash, sleep dart, and particularly a hack, make him an easy kill when he's committed deep into your backline. So, to summarize Doomfist, he's great against uncoordinated teams, and particularly teams who leave their supports unattended. If you come in from off angles, and particularly from a high ground vantage to give your slam that extra charge, you can delete squishies before they even know what hit them. There's not many heroes in the game who can get picks as consistently and as easily as Doomfist. However, Doomfist is more vulnerable to crowd control than most other heroes as well, and the more a character relies on their movement, the harder things like sleeps, stuns, flashbangs and hacks will hurt them. If you're up against a comp with a lot of those, or if they're just focusing you down properly, then you probably want to switch off. And against teams with a lot of members clumped up, where you can't control who you hit, there's better characters to pick who will give you more value. And the same goes if you needed, let's say, a lot of shield break in your team. And on that note, the same kind of criteria actually applies to Tracer. She's great when left unattended, or when there's not a lot of characters who can disable her on the enemy team. Unlike Doom, she is actually good against bunker comps, because the more people that are clumped up, the more value her pulse bomb will get. And she's great at sticking a Bastion and confining him to death. However, with Brig being in the game, you are only one switch away from having your life being made that much harder. Like I said, a good Tracer will still play around it, but the value you could get goes down significantly, and at that point, another hero will just be a better pick. If you can't get into the backline as Tracer and you're forced to hit tanks instead, there's better choices. Next, let's summarize Pharah. As you've all experienced in your games, a Pharah with no one to contest her will shred teams. And while the pros might just outkill a Pharah's team on the ground, your latter games are definitely not going to play out that way. Particularly with a Mercy in tow, you can really take games over. Also, she's great against fat and stubborn comps like Goats and Bunker because she can outrange them, farm ult, and then drop barrage before support ults are online and guarantee a few kills. However, it's also pretty straightforward that if the enemy team starts putting a lot of resources into countering you, like double or sometimes even triple hit scan, or if they have a diva who's good at killing your Mercy, then it might be time to swap off. Of course, the enemy spending that much time and energy into dealing with you is probably a win in itself, and if you can get people to switch, you've already gained a tactical advantage for your team. Then, there's Sombra, who's also amazing at breaking down Goats and Bunker comp. EMP is such a strong ultimate, and if your team follows up on it properly, you're almost guaranteed a fight win. That's also why Sombra is a great pick for people who are good communicators, because she can scout, she can disable key targets, and she can set up big plays for your team. On top of this, she can really help her backline by shutting down divers like Doomfist and Hammond, who become absolutely useless ult batteries when hacked. However, when it comes to raw damage, Sombra is not it. So if you want to be someone who gets kill after kill after kill, this probably isn't the hero for you. Sombra is as much utility as she is DPS, and she's best when played in a smart fashion, which is also why she's much less effective if your team won't follow up. It's great getting a hack off on a Reinhardt, but if your team won't push in, what's the point? Finally, that brings us to Genji. Now, as I said at the start of the video, Genji is a great duelist and great at picking off isolated targets. More so than most heroes, he revels in taking one-on-ones, provided you're good enough to win them consistently. His deflect really gives him a big advantage against most of the DPS, and also healers like Ana and Zen. On top of this, Dragon Blade is a really strong ultimate, and one of the best reasons to pick Genji. He can absolutely guarantee you big value, provided you use it right and get a little help from your team. That's also why it's not wise to play Genji if you just want to be the classic Genji main, flame your team, I need healing kind of guy. Because unlike Tracer or Sombra, Genji does not sustain himself well. He needs healing, he needs space, he needs help. Sure, you can do without it, but he's twice as effective when he gets those things. He's also not a good pick if the enemy is running a lot of fat bodies. A duelist is only good if he's going to win his duels, and Genji is not going to beat a Reinhardt or a Roadhog in a one-on-one, and he's probably not even going to find himself in a one-on-one with those heroes. Nor will a duelist do well when half his kit isn't usable. So characters like Mei, Winston and Moira, who ignore his deflect and can hurt him constantly, can really shut him down. So if they have heroes like that who are focusing you, you may want to switch. And that's all I got for today, guys. Hope you found this video helpful. We've almost come to the conclusion of our thought process series, and next time I'll wrap up the remaining DPS. So if your favorite hasn't come up yet, don't worry, we'll get to it. As always, I want to give a big shout out to my patrons who do the awesome job of supporting me. Now, you guys might have noticed that I've got a new logo, and I was able to commission Pania, a member of my Discord server, to make it for me. So shout out to her too. But while I won't be needing any new artwork anytime soon, you can still come down to my server and join in all the fun, like pugs and group finds, and chat shenanigans. Otherwise, I'll be back next week with another video. See you guys soon.